It's really a crazy story. The right place, right time. So I majored in pre-med biology, and it's crazy. I can't even help my kids with their biology homework now. Somehow got through with decent grades, but I was originally planning on going to med school, and I wanted to be a small town doctor. There was deals, or there still are, like this. You can go to a small town and they'll pay off your student loans and commit to that town for X number of years. And about my junior year in college, I realized I did not want to go to med school. This was not my calling, but I finished off my degree and really didn't know what I was going to do. I wanted to still get into NFL as a scout. I was still close with the coaches at the University of Nebraska. Charlie McBride was our longtime defensive coordinator. Walked into his office and I said, hey, how do I become a scout? And he said, next time one of these scouts that comes through that I'm close with comes through, I'll give you a call, have you come in and meet him. I went home 2 hours later. He called me and said, get your ass off the couch. I've got someone I want you to meet, Tom Brady. We went out for pizza and beer. We talked about the players. I had to submit a resume and all that stuff, but it helped that I kind of developed a friendship with him, a bond, and then I got an internship with the Dolphins. So it was just kind of being right place, right time.
Field Talk Podcast is presented by Roback. If you've ever seen me out, you've probably seen me wearing Roback, like is the case right now with one of my favorite Roback t-shirts, but they've got head-to-toe gear. I'm talking hats, t-shirts, quarter zips, polos, and I'm talking a ton of polos, plus the signature hoodies. I wear them pretty much all year round, especially when it's just a little bit chilly. Pants, shorts, joggers, it's the best fit, it's the best feel. And if you haven't yet visited Roback.com, head on over to RHOBACK.com and enter my name, Field, Field, for 20% off your first order. In a league full of impatience, Jason Licht and the Buccaneers have had an excellent partnership for over a decade that has included a Super Bowl championship. Jason's seen a lot of different things and is also the only GM in NFL history who can say that he recruited Tom Brady as a free agent, at least doing so successfully, as Brady, of course, finished his illustrious career by helping lead the Buccaneers to multiple playoff appearances and a Super Bowl victory. On today's Field Talk podcast, we catch up with the longtime Bucs GM, Jason Licht. Great to be joined now by Bucs General Manager Jason Licht. And I got to start here, Jason. Do you know where you rank amongst most tenured or longest tenured GMs in the NFL?
I think I'm somewhere around my fifth.
Yeah, it's like right around there. You've got Mickey and Howie and a couple of others that have been there forever, and Jerry, who's been in Dallas since the moment he joined the team. Yeah, and Les as well. But it's
Snyder,
crazy. Yeah, it's a crazy club. The number of GMs that had your longevity is.
It's crazy, man. Time flies too. I was wondering if I was going to be done after 5 years, and then here I am in year 12. It's crazy.
12 years. It's really an accomplishment. Anybody who knows the world of football knows the 12 years in some people's shoes might be like 6 different stops, whether it's the college or the pro level. So one stop in 12 years is impressive. But I wanted to kind of work backwards before we got to where we are now. Growing up, when did you imagine that one day you'd work in the world of football?
It really didn't come until college. I mean, I was like a lot of kids, thinking I could be a pro football player, just love the game. But it wasn't until I was at the University of Nebraska, I was a walk-on player there, and just was mesmerized by the scouts that came through, and thought I wanted to do that someday. I thought I had it back then, I guess I did have an eye for talent because I knew I wasn't good enough to be a star player. Yeah. And I knew I would never be able to do what this guy does. So it just kind of became kind of like a passion of mine, evaluating players when I was watching tape with the coaches. And so it just kind of became something that I just didn't know how to do it, didn't know how to become one, didn't know who to even go to until later on when I was done with college. But that's when I started having a passion for this.
Yeah, so you began your college career, as you mentioned, at Nebraska. I got to ask, I mean, you've drafted successfully some awesome Nebraska players, signed some along the way as well. Vontae David and Ndamukong Suh amongst some of the more prominent names. Is there a little bit of you that kind of always wants to draft a Nebraska guy every year? It's okay to admit yes.
I would say it certainly gets my mother. My father passed away in 2019, but he would get so excited if anytime we had a Nebraska player. And now my mother, her favorite place, she comes to all the Bucs games. She lives down here now, and she has the only jerseys she has are the Nebraska players. So Levante, she rocks the Levante jersey almost every week. So
there's got to be, if Levante ever has an incentive in his contract, I don't recall offhand whether he does or not. There's got to be like a Nebraska clause in there just for the two of you to bond over. And I love watching Levante and his incredible career, all with the Buccaneers. But you mentioned you didn't really know how to one day become a scout. So I'm sure you're asked this question all the time. I'm sure you have a pile of resumes on your desk of people that want to one day work for the Buccaneers. So what was the first step? At what point did you kind of feel like you had a game plan that if you followed it successfully, would lead you to a career in scouting?
It's really a crazy story. It's really the right place, right time. So I majored in biology and pre-med biology. And I mean, it's crazy. I can't even help my kids with their biology homework now. So somehow got through with decent grades, but I was originally planning on going to med school, and I wanted to be a small town doctor, general practitioner. They would, if there was deals, or there still are like this, you go to a small town and they'll pay off your student loans, and you commit to that town for X number of years. But it wasn't about my junior year in college. I realized I did not want to go to med school. This was not my calling, and I probably did the world a favor by not being a doctor. But I finished off my degree and really didn't know what I was going to do with it. But I was still so interested in getting into the NFL as a scout. And I walked over. I was still friends with a lot of my roommates were still at the university, even though I transferred to Wesleyan. And they were still playing at the U, and I was still close with the coaches at the University of Nebraska still. And so I walked into Charlie McBride was our defensive coordinator, longtime defensive coordinator. He was a legend. Walked into his office and I said, "Hey, how do I become a scout?" He was the pro liaison at Nebraska that talked to the scouts that came through. And he said, "Well, I'll tell you what, next time one of these scouts that comes through that I'm close with comes through, I'll give you a call, have you come in and meet them, and you can ask them yourself how you can do this." So I said, "Great." So I went home and he called me 2 hours later and said, "Get your ass off the couch." I said, "How'd you know I was on the couch?" He said, "I've got someone I want you to meet." So I hightailed it back to the offices there, and Tom Brady, longtime GM of the Packers, the Falcons, but at the time he was with the Dolphins as a college director. He came through on a visit, and we went out for pizza and beer. We talked about the players, and he ended up talking to people back at the Dolphins, and I had to submit a resume and all that stuff, but it helped that I knew him, kind of developed a friendship with him, a bond, and then I got an internship with the Dolphins. So it was just kind of being right place, right time.
So you've worked in several different organizations. You mentioned the Dolphins, where you get started. That also includes the Eagles, the Cardinals, the Patriots, and of course now your longest stay, which is with the Buccaneers, as the GM. And you've worked with some legendary coaches along the way, right? I mean, Jimmy Johnson, I believe, is the head coach when you first got to Miami. Is that correct?
Don Shula was.
Don Shula was, excuse me. Okay, so Don, of course, before Jimmy, in New England, Bill Belichick in Philadelphia, Andy Reid. Are there like bits and pieces from each that you feel like you picked up when you were there that have stuck with you and played an integral role of how you do things today?
100%. I've been really, really fortunate to be with all of them. I actually had 1 year crossover with Pete Carroll in New England. Now he doesn't remember that, but so with Jimmy, he was amazing. It was all about the draft and personnel, and he loved wheeling and dealing, and he really understood the value of the draft pick, and developed the chart, obviously, and just that's kind of where I really kind of developed even more of a passion for the draft with Jimmy. Coach Belichick, I mean, I don't know where to begin. He's just talk about understanding the value of players, value of positions, building the team. It's all about, we're not talent collectors, we're team builders. That's not about the most talented 53. It's the right 53. All of that stuff I got through Coach Belichick. And then Andy Reid was just a tremendous leader of men. And I learned many, many things from him. But one thing I always appreciated about him is when things were going good, he gave praise to all of his assistants. And when things were going bad, he took the arrows. And that's what made us all just love working for Andy. And in addition to being a great coach.
Yeah, I mean, talk about that. That's a who's who of NFL coaches.
We can talk about Bruce Arians for
and Bruce too. Bruce we could talk about. I want to find a way to have a beer with Bruce, because maybe a glass of whiskey. I don't know what his preference is these days, but that guy is a blast. On top of his endless football knowledge, that much is for sure.
Well, I've had plenty of those drinks with him. So.
Over a lot of victories as well. You continue to grow in responsibility and rise up the ranks. How does that process happen? I know I had just a cup of coffee compared to your great career in the world of scouting, but I remember this weird dynamic where all the young scouts wanted to learn from each other and pick each other's brain, but you're also kind of competing, right? Everybody has a similar goal. It's not just winning. It's also one day becoming, if not a GM, an assistant GM, a director of college scouting, someone in an important seat in this room. What are you able to do to kind of separate yourself in this highly competitive field?
Well, it's a people business, just like all businesses. It's driven by relationships and trust, and there's a fine line of just earning someone's trust without stepping on toes. And I just kind of felt like I sat in the back and just gave my opinion and gave my true opinion. Didn't care if it was different. But respectfully gave my opinion, even if it differed from everybody else. And I think that kind of separated myself from some others along the way, and was able to get promoted a few different times. I do have one kind of funny story. When I was working in Philly, was assistant director of player personnel. That's where that's my first position when I was there. And my wife, at that time, she was my fiance. We were we had a place in Philly, and she was working in Manhattan at the time. So she would commute every day on the train, and her train left at 5:20 out of Penn Station. And I would drive her and drop her off at 5 and then just go into the office. So I was one of the first ones in the office. And they thought it was just because I just couldn't wait to get to work. But it was like, there was just nothing for me to do. So I ended up getting promoted because they thought I was a real go-getter there just for being in the office early. So no, I'm kidding, but that probably had something.
Yeah.
But it's just earning people's trust, and it's about relationships.
Say the hours are no joke in the NFL, but I'm sure it makes the home life a little bit easier when your wife is like, you think you got it hard. I mean, I got to get on a train for probably 4 hours a day combined round trip. So both of you putting the time in.
Definitely a sacrifice on her part.
For sure. And you start to kind of have your name circle onto the prospective GM list. You interview for jobs other than Tampa Bay prior to getting the job. But you recall, and it's a dozen, close to 11, 12 years now of being in Tampa. Do you recall your perception of what you are walking into at the time? I'm sure there's a ton of excitement. Becoming an NFL GM is a dream realized for you. But this franchise then versus what you have built it to now is very different. What do you recall of that version of the Buccaneers?
Well, it wasn't an ideal situation, but I was just very eager to get the opportunity. And of course, you're young. You think, I could make a difference. I can change this. It turns out you need to hire a lot of very good people around you in order for it to happen, which I ultimately did. But we didn't have a quarterback. They hired the head coach, Lovey, at the time before they hired the GM, which is, not really the standard, but it's just the way it was then at that point for them, for the owners. And so I remember I was just kind of fearless. I walked into it. I look back on it sometimes and I tell my wife, I go, geez, why did we take this job? I'm glad we did. Don't get me wrong. But looking back on it, it wasn't the ideal situation, but turned out to be fantastic. Obviously, I've been here 12 years and my ownership group, the Glazers, are amazing. And I've gotten to have a personal relationship with all of them. They've stood by me, and they're a great group. They really want to win bad, so that it's always helpful when the owners, their number one priority is winning.
I would imagine most owners that are identifying general manager candidates are looking at the people that they consider the best scouts, right? That's an easy way to identify people that might be good as GMs because it's a huge part of your job. But it's far from the only part of your job, right? I'm sure you wish you could watch more tape than you actually get to because you're dealing with a million other things. What was it like early on taking on the challenges that go beyond anything you were doing in your prior roles?
You wished that you wished you could do what got you into the seat.
Yeah.
More like you said, it becomes now, until I finally figured out how to delegate and to trust people. I mean, for example, I've got several on the personnel side that are amazing. Rob McCartney, Mike Beal, Tony Hardy, Shane Scannell. I could name them. Keep going on. Andy Spire. I wish I could name all my scouts right now, so I'll just kind of blanket it. But on the other side, I have Mike Greenberg and Jackie Davidson, and they handle all those things that aren't my cup of tea per se. And they advise me, they tell me what's going on, but I trust them. I trust them to do it. So I finally learned how to delegate and delegate correctly, so I can focus on watching more tape. And which is what I love to do. It's like a moment. I can sit in my office and watch tape all day and just be very relaxed. But unfortunately, this position, you're putting fires out a lot, and you're putting several out a day, and you almost kind of sometimes feel like you walk into work and you there's an open and closed on your door, and it's like, okay, open for business, and you're just waiting for the stream of people to come in with the issues that we have to take care of.
Yeah, it would be nice every once in a while if you could just watch, I know Nebraska football, but I just want to throw in an Oregon-Washington game and just study tight ends and linebackers for an hour. Is that too much to ask as a GM? Sometimes it might be, depending on what's going on that day. I'm going to get to a lot of the winning you guys have done recently, but you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation how, when you're at year 12 now, and you thought early on, 4 or 5 in, am I going to make it through this? Because at the beginning of your tenure, you're having to, I always tell people that when you take on a less than desirable position, when I talk about the state of the franchise, it's not just adding pieces. Sometimes it's untying knots first, right? It's whether it's salary cap concerns, whether it's, players that maybe don't fit the system or the vision that you have to build a football team, whatever it might be. When you think back to the early portion of your GM career, what are some of the things that maybe stand out that were important lessons you learned on the fly that have helped shape what's been a ton of winning for you since?
The collaboration with the personnel, cap, and coaching, having everybody on the same page and working well with each other is the key. It's when you don't collaborate and you build a brick wall and say, don't worry about what we're doing, you do what you do and we'll do what we do type of thing, it just never works. And I've learned how to, get everyone to feel very vested in the picks that we make, and feel like everybody feels like it was almost their idea, so that gets the best chance for the prospect, for the player, to maximize his ability when everybody is vested in the player. So it's all about collaboration.
So let's rewind from right now, but fast forward from that period to a year that was bizarre in a million different ways. It's 2020. I think at least up in Connecticut, we were still having to wear a mask everywhere. Pandemic. This is right after the pandemic started, actually, as a matter of fact. All kinds of uncertainty in the world. And your team, as you look at the roster, has built up this incredible amount of talent with one spot that felt like if you figure that part out, Watch out. And the greatest quarterback in the history of football happens to be a free agent for the first and turns out only time in his career. What's it like recruiting Tom Brady to your team?
Man, whenever the subject of COVID comes up, I mean, I don't mean this to sound, say this the right way, but I loved COVID. It was like that
very productive period, right?
I have nothing but fond memories of it. Almost. Take away, I understand the seriousness of it. And,
of course.
I meant just that period of time where, Tom Brady wanted to come and play for us. That was pretty cool. It was, Tom Field, him personally, it didn't take recruiting. He did his homework. And he was basically knew which teams needed him and needed a quarterback and wanted him. And he chose. Now, I don't know if we were first, second, third, whatever it was, but, he usually makes pretty good decisions. So he came here. He saw that we had an offensive line. He saw that we had Mike and Chris. He saw that we had a coach that was a seasoned coach that proven track record. So, and then plus living in Tampa was for an old guy, it's pretty good.
I say from.
But
I might be old. I probably was around where Tom was age, well, maybe a little younger than Tom was. And part of me is like, can I get to Tampa? It's rained 15, and I'm not kidding, 15 straight Saturdays here in the state of Connecticut, Jason. It's like the lead story on news every Saturday morning as the streak continues. So I might come find a casita to come live in soon enough down there in the Tampa area. But during this weird time where limited in terms of what you guys can do together because of the pandemic and barely any fans in some stadiums. But how quickly does Tom make a mark on an organization and kind of change things, obviously for the better, because you guys go on and win the Super Bowl the first year together?
Immediately. He got the players arranged to have them do workouts at Berkeley Prep School, which is where my kids go. He got that arranged. I remember it was all the news stations had helicopters flying over it, footage of it. I remember very vividly. I mean, it wasn't that long ago, but him saying, "Would you be interested in signing Gronk?" I said, "Well, yeah. Does he want to play?" And he goes, "He does want to play." And now it's up to you. I mean, he wasn't a pushy type. He just said, do what you can if you want him. I mean, I'm not telling you how much or anything like that. Just know that he wants to play. So I spent, a solid month walking around my neighborhood negotiating with Coach Belichick on the compensation, and it all came together. But I just mean just him signing. All of a sudden, we had guys like Gronk want to come here. AB, it was an amazing time.
Yeah, it certainly was. And you guys go on obviously to reach the highest of highs, not only winning a Super Bowl, but at the time, the first team to win a Super Bowl in its home stadium. The Rams did it, a year or so later, but you set a trend. You started the trend that is hard to replicate in the NFL. But I think part of the appeal, you said, Tom was in some ways doing his research just as much as teams were doing research on Tom. It looked like, if you just put the logic hat on for a second, you see this roster that is chock full of great players. And you've made trades. You've, of course, signed free agents like you do every offseason. But when I think about your 12 years of success, I think the hallmark of your roster building, outside of Tom Brady, in that one special exception, is the draft. I think of the 3 days of the draft as maybe the most exciting on the NFL calendar. Perhaps I'm a bit biased because of what I do for ESPN. But I always feel like you guys, it seems like it's just steady, balanced, and calm. Does it feel that way on the inside of the draft room for you?
More and more every year it has. I stopped pitting out all the way down to my waist like I used to. The kind of learned over time here with my staff how to put all the work in beforehand and answer all the questions. This guy versus this guy, those kind of things with head coach beforehand. So it's, you've got the game plan when you're in there. And so it's made it a lot smoother for me and able to kind of clear my head and make decisions a little bit easier. Now, there's still a rush when you take the player or the player that you want is there. I still get antsy. I still want to always move up and have to resist the temptation of doing it, just to sell the farm to move up a couple picks. But sometimes you have to do it. Sometimes more oftentimes not, you get your guy anyway. So it's those kind of things that I have my staff help hold me back when I'm in there.
But sometimes you can't resist. Was it going up one pick to get Tristan Wirfs, 2 picks in the first round?
So that in that particular case, we found out that that the Niners were mulling over another trade opportunity that they had from someone behind us, and they decided they wanted to take ours instead of the other one. And I have pretty good source telling me that the other team was going to take Tristan. So I'm happy that that worked out, man.
Yeah, sometimes, I get it. You got to be disciplined. But sometimes when you've got a player that you're convicted on and what, 5 years, 6 years later, I'm losing track of time, but, inarguably one of the best players in the NFL. So
we started trying to trade up for him at 7. So it worked out in our favor that nobody wanted to do that. I was willing to give up quite a bit to go up there too. So
yeah, man. All right. Well, whoever that's someone that could have made a bigger deal and landed more capital. They didn't, and it worked out best for you. When you think about drafting, I think so many of us get fixated. It's a natural thing to do on the first round of the NFL draft. This year, I felt like that was really the case when you have a shallow quarterback class, but really notable quarterbacks and a couple of headlining non-quarterback prospects as well. I'd be curious how much, is there almost a different gratification that you get in the subsequent rounds, because it's not the names that every website has talked about, or every TV station or every radio station, you name it, has talked about for the past 4 months at sort of forever and ever. Is there a rush that comes with nailing a round 3 or round 5 pick?
In some cases, more of a rush. It's feeling that to get that diamond in the rough, to get that player that you sometimes feel has first round value or could become first round value at some point with development, and getting him later. And especially when the entire staff is excited about a player that you get in the 4th round, because you talked about him as going much higher in your preparation. So yeah, there is in a lot of cases a bigger rush with those, and even going all the way down to the 7th round sometimes. So it's it's fun. That's what makes it just. It's a drug for most of us here, doing that. So you prepare for it. The scouts that are on the road, they're preparing for it year round, that day. So it's a lot of fun.
When you were talking about the 4th round pick who probably should have gone a lot higher, I can't help but think about a running back you guys took in the 4th round last year, Bucky Irving, who early returns seemed to suggest perhaps that was a bit of a steal for you guys. Of course, we talk about the player and his traits and people know the stats and the production associated with these players. But in your experience, I don't know if you can put a percentage on it, but just like a general tenor of how important a person is, along with how important the player skill set is. I don't know what kind of percentage I could put on. I would just tell you it's very, very high. I say this around, I've said this around here a lot in press conferences too, is when we've missed, we rarely miss on the player. We miss on the person. And you have to have the right kind of person. And I've over the years have taken a lot more players off the board every year, that go in the first round. And I talked about this earlier a couple months ago, I think, on an interview, that I give my owners a document the day before the draft that said, okay, this, just so you know, here's a section of players that are probably going to go and could go in the first round. We have a prediction of 1st, 2nd, 3rd, or somewhere in the draft that they're going to go that we don't have on our board. So don't be shocked when these players get picked and we don't have them on the board. So, and it's for, this guy doesn't love football, or this guy, this, whatever, myriad of reasons. There's injuries too, but our drafts have gotten a lot better over the last few years, just because we've focused on the right kind of person and kind of resisted the temptation of taking the super talented guy that we don't know if he's the right kind of person. this is a non-draft acquisition, but I think probably, the person was an instrumental part of the evaluation. And he was at perhaps a crossroads in his career, but a couple of off seasons ago now, let's see, 2 full seasons together. So the 2023 off season, you take a flyer on Baker Mayfield. What's that like? Baker had this very bizarre prior season, right? Has multiple stops. He gets claimed off of waivers by the Rams for the end of the season. He starts a game for them like 48 hours after he lands in Los Angeles. But still, there were probably more questions than answers surrounding Baker at that point. What goes into the process of feeling comfortable that you can take a player who went number 1 overall, he's talented, and also kind of rebuild his value and eventually have him be your franchise quarterback?
Well, like you said, he went 1 overall. We had him as the best quarterback in that year's draft. Todd loved him when he was with the Jets, and they were preparing to take quarterback that year, and got to know him very well. And he had some success in Cleveland. I mean, he won a playoff game. I mean,
yeah,
it's
haven't been many of those in Cleveland.
Haven't been many of those, and so we knew what his ceiling was, and there was a lot of quarterbacks to choose from, and we also knew what his floor was, but the other quarterbacks at the time that we were looking at didn't have the ceiling that Baker did. And then somehow the football gods aligned the stars to have him want to come here once again. He circled us, and he basically knew that we couldn't pay hardly anything because of our cap situation. And he chose us, didn't kind of just wrote off that year's salary, meaning he's not playing for this year's money. He's playing for a future deal. And this is the place where I want to be. And we welcomed him with open arms. He had a little competition at first. We wanted to be respectful of that, of Kyle Trask. And Kyle gave it his best. And, they were going neck and neck for a little bit. But Baker pulled out of it, and he is what he is. And this whole town has welcomed him with open arms. It's like he just belonged here. And we're hoping that he's here for a long time.
There are certain players that doesn't matter who you root for, who they're playing against. It just the joy they experience playing football is pretty evident when you watch it through the TV screen or watch it through the film. And Baker certainly fits in that category. As you think about your football journey, 2 decades plus in the NFL, Super Bowl champion as a GM, a ton of winning along the way. What would be some of the lessons that if you were speaking to a group of people that wanted to, again, one day become a GM, might be some of the most important you've learned?
Say number 1 is just be authentic and be yourself and do it the way you want to do it. Set it up the way you want to set it up. You can take bits and pieces from places that you've worked, like we talked about with Coach Belichick, Coach Reed, BA, Jimmy Johnson, but still be yourself. And because you can't completely copy what someone else has done, no matter how successful they were, and make it work unless, that's what really is true to your identity. So I would say that was number 1. Number 2 is you got to, these are old adages that are, people talk about all the time, but be the dumbest guy in the room. and that is definitely the case for me. And that's,
I don't believe that part.
I'm fine admitting that because we've had success with it, and you're only as good as your help, and you hire really, really good people that you trust. And I've been very fortunate to do that and also have them here with me for a very long time.
Yep, and it's been cool to see so many of your people that you have hired not just rise up the ranks within Tampa, but then go on to opportunities. Most recently, of course, John Spytek now taking over as the Raiders GM. Well, Jason Licht, Bucs GM, 12 years, a remarkable run with still a lot more ahead. I can't thank you enough for joining us here today. And when we're having this conversation, we're just a couple of days away from the one quiet, hopefully, stretch of your year. Enjoy it with your family, and training camp will be here before you know it.
I appreciate it.
I've had the chance to know Jason Licht for a long time now, and I'll just say it. One of the great guys, one of the best guys in the NFL, who's obviously excellent at what he does, but an excellent person as well. Someone who's been kind to me throughout my career, and his results speak for themselves. And it was cool to hear more about how he got to where he is. And one lesson or one thing that stuck out to me about his success with the Buccaneers is that he is willing to admit it takes a team, and his trust that he has and the collaboration that he takes on with his staff has allowed them to have a ton of success in Tampa. with lots more coming, by the way, as the team once again looks like, at least in my eyes, a playoff team in 2025. A big thanks to Roback, who continues to support this podcast. If you haven't head over yet to roback.com, that's RHOBACK.com, you can do so and find all of the gear that you could want. Head to toe, best fit, best feel. And if you enter my name, Field, F-I-E-L-D, you can get 20% off your first order. And a reminder, if you enjoyed the show today, press that subscribe button below if you're watching on YouTube, or if you're listening wherever you get your podcasts, you can download, subscribe, rate, review. It certainly helps us, and hopefully you're enjoying some stories from people around the NFL that you may not have heard before. Until next time, we'll talk to you all soon.